ago and has now been restored. So I will try to keep this brief. I would like to express a welcome to Monsieur Dupin, who is Mayor of Belling, please, and Mr. Chopin, who is Vice President of Tourism. I also welcome all of you who have come along today. So I think first, so we have an understanding of this site and its historical importance, I would like to invite Brigadier Jim Tanner to provide a historical perspective of what happened here 100 years ago today.
Thank you, Andy. At about 08:20 in the morning, on the 29th of September 1918, on this line, the British Army to the west saw flares going up, white over white over white, a signal for success. Almost unbelievable success on an attack that had been seen largely as a sacrificial stunt, really to take the Germans' attention off the main effort of 4th Army to the north, which would be the attack by the Australian and American Corps over the top of the Bellingham Tunnel. But the British Army by the middle of 1918 was foremost in the defeat of the Germans on the Western Front. And since the opening of that final great offensive in August 1918, the Germans had been pushed back everywhere. But by the early autumn, they'd fallen back again on the seemingly impregnable defences of the Hindenburg Line. We call it the Hindenburg Line, something of a misnomer, as the Germans called it the Siegfriedstellung, the Siegfried position. This defensive position of great depth and great complexity. It had been more than 2 years in the making. This great fortress, 6,000 to 8,000 metres deep, reinforced everywhere with concrete bunkers, great swathes of barbed wire, 50 to 100 metres deep out in front. And here, the fortress was further reinforced by this formidable natural barrier, the St Quentin canal. The Germans were very confident that they could halt the Allied advance here, and in some bloody standoff, the Allies would be forced to negotiate an armistice. Yet on the 29th of September, the 46th North Midland Division, led by men of the 137th Staffordshire Brigade, swept across the canal, smashed through the German defences and broke the Hindenburg Line. 6 weeks later, the war was over. An Allied victory had been achieved, and David Lloyd George, the British Prime Minister, who didn't heap great praise on the British Army, even he said this. He called the battle here the greatest chapter in British military history. Not many people know about it. We know about the Battle of Waterloo, but we don't know about the battle that broke the Hindenburg Line. This division, the 46th North Midland Division, it drew its men from the heart of England, from the counties of Lincoln, Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire and Staffordshire. We have to acknowledge that by 1918 that territorial nature of the division had been diluted somewhat by conscripts, men from all over the country, actually from all over the empire and outside. There were Scotsmen in the division, there were some American volunteers in the division, but the highest proportion was still Midlanders, and it's a little surprising how many of those men had actually survived all the years of the war. And it had retained its territorial force character. Its divisional commander, Major General Gerald Boyd, was a superb leader. He'd only commanded the division from the beginning of September. Gerald Boyd DSO DCM. That tells you something. He'd won his Distinguished Conduct Medal as a private soldier with the Dorset Regiment in the Boer War. 0 hour 0550 on the morning of the 29th of September. In the lead, the 137th Staffordshire Brigade with its 3 battalions. You'll forgive me for saying the 5th, 6th North Staffords because Levison Wood's over there. But don't mention the 5th North Staffords. The battalion had been broken up in January 1918. There was a good number of 5th North Staffords in the 6th. That battalion was on the left here, its objective being the bridge. In the middle, the 5th South Staffords, and on the right to the south, the 6th South Staffords. Their objective was this canal, the blue line, which was the Hindenburg main defence line here, and to get out about another 500 metres to the east, excuse me, up onto the high ground and onto the brown line, consolidate there. If they saw the success signal again, the 138th Brigade on the left, the Lincolns and Leicesters, the 139th Brigade on the right, the Sherwood Foresters, would pass through the Staffords and continue on all the way out to the Green Line and the divisional objective. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they were there. They kept up with their extraordinarily heavy bombardment, relatively few casualties. The battalion here had 15 men killed, unheard of in some of the bloodletting of the First World War. I have to say we're delighted here today that there are representatives of 3 of those 6th North Staffords. We've got the Charlton family over from Canada. Captain Humphrey Charlton commanded B Company of the 6th North Staffords, and he took this bridge. We've got the 2 grandsons of Lieutenant Roderick Barron. 6th North Staffords actually attached to B Company. He's in that famous photograph taken the day after with Brigadier John Campbell VC standing on the bridge there addressing the Staffordshire Brigade. Some of the men still in their life jackets that they put back on just to demonstrate because they'd thrown them down once they crossed the canal. All those men were up there fairly high up, is young Lieutenant Roderick Barron. And we've got here today as well Lieutenant Colonel Mark Bailey from the Royal Army Medical Corps, whose great uncle, Corporal Ernest Tyra, was adding a bar to his already earned military medal with the 6th North Staffords. So in 2.5 hours, almost exactly in accordance with the timetable, the Staffords had everywhere consolidated the blue line. They reorganised as much as they could. They were pretty mixed up. They leapfrogged companies to get forward, and then they attacked again behind their barrage as it started to advance at a very slow pace. You tried to walk 100 yards in 4 minutes. That's extremely slow. That's the speed of the barrage here east of the canal. Took them up onto the brown line, and the barrage sat there for 5.5 hours from when they got there to 0 plus 5.5 hours for those 2 supporting brigades to continue their attack. And then they were on the move again. By early afternoon, the division was up onto the Green Line, and the 32nd Division, which was already crossing the bridges, was ready to follow up the next day. So at 5:30 p.m, just 12 hours after 0 hour, they'd achieved all their objectives. And the victory here by the North Midlanders was more so because the Australians, and in particular the Americans to the north, had had an extremely difficult day trying to break through the very strong defences west of Bellicourt village. And it was a success here that broke through the line that allowed then the Australians to pass through and get down and link up with the 5th Lincolns, who were up here on the left. Of course, the battle went on. Up on Mannequin Hill, 6 kilometres to our east, on the 3rd and 4th of October, William Cotman of the 6th North Staffords won his Victoria Cross. By then he was Lance Corporal Cotman, VC, DCM and bar, MM and bar, and an MID that he'd won on the Somme. The most highly decorated British soldier, sorry, not British soldier, soldier of the British Empire in the whole of the First World War, up on Mannequin Hill, and he survived the war. These battle-hardened men had smashed through the Hindenburg line and left Captain John Milne of the 5th Leicesters, who wrote a lovely little account. He said at the end of it, these men who'd been part of what their corps commander in 1916 had written them off as lacking offensive spirit after the disaster at Goncourt on the Somme. He said the Staffordshire Terrier was a fine fighting man.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said in my introduction, this memorial was inaugurated by the Western Front Association 25 years ago. We're very privileged to have with us someone who was actually present at the original unveiling. So we think it is rather fitting that Kathy Stevenson comes forward and unveils the memorial for us on this refreshment after 25 years. Kathy? So what I think it's appropriate we should do now is hold a brief service of remembrance, and we'll start with the last one. I would now like to invite Mr. Colin Wagstaff, who is the chairman of the Western Front Association, to step forward and lay a wreath on behalf of the Western Front Association. I would now like to invite to come forward anyone else who wishes to lay a wreath, and if you can come forward one at a time, that would be appreciated. date today?